Okay, to conclude, I want to tell you three stories. The first is the story of three friends, Jonathan Rosenthal, Michael Rosine, and Rink Dickinson, who were among the first to develop the concept that's come to be known as fair trade. Fair trade is a system of trading partnerships that seeks to intervene in the market by setting a minimum price for paying producers of export goods. The extra cost of this minimum price is shared by the fair trade wholesalers, using practices such as maximum wages for executives, and by the consumers, who often pay small premiums for fair trade commodities. The goal is to transform the trade system to make it more equitable and to improve the lives of small producers within the market system. Here's how it works. You pay $3.80 for a venti latte at Starbucks. The guy who grew that coffee gets about a penny. I pay $5 to $8 for a half pound of coffee. The Colombian farmer gets about 49 cents of that. Families of coffee growers in Latin America often get by on one meal a day. There's a strong temptation among coffee growers to switch to more profitable but illegal crops like cocaine and heroin. Why is this the case? Well, first of all, in the coffee trade, there will sometimes be as many as 7 middlemen, from local bulk buyers to shippers to roasters, each adding their expenses and profit margin to the retail price. Second, global market competition makes coffee harvest prices like playing roulette. One year, the Cambodian coffee trade will reap huge profits, and farmers will make a little more than usual at the expense of growers who are a few weeks behind in the seasonal trade in Latin America. And another year, Latin American countries will make out like bandits, and it will be Africa who's at the bottom. Growers never know what they're going to get. Equal Exchange, the company founded by the three friends, pays coffee growers a guaranteed price of $1.26 a pound for regular coffee beans and $1.41 a pound for organic coffee, regardless of what the market rates are in that given year. In order to make a go of it, companies like Equal Exchange often have to be creative. Sometimes they will partner with church groups or college campuses, where there's a greater concern with the ethics of where your products came from. In some cases, companies like Equal Exchange can bring in coffee for less than market retail chains. The lifestyles of farmers in free trade co-ops that are supported by free trade are usually among the highest of agrarian laborers in their respective countries. And fair trade has become popular enough that European and American coffee retail chains are having to pay attention to free trade, which is why almost everybody, including Starbucks, has at least one or two brands that are fair trade coffee. Knowing how much they can expect to earn for their produce, regardless of global market fluctuations, allows local farmers in developing countries to plan ahead, to expand their businesses, to take out loans. Many form cooperatives and pool their money to build schools or clinics or create projects like coffee roasteries that add value to the product. There are a number of objections to fair trade. One of the most common is to say that it doesn't guarantee quality. This has been largely refuted by the fact that many fair trade brands have won national and international taste awards. Another argument is that it's unfair to shareholders. Shareholders deserve, because of their investment in your company, to get the highest possible dividends that they can earn. Companies like Equal Exchange deal with this ethical obligation by setting maximum salaries for executives. Instead of the executive having a package of hundreds of millions of dollars, they pass those savings on to the shareholders and continue to operate in ways that are fair to the coffee producers. Another argument is that fair trade is socialistic because it intervenes in the free operation of the market. Defenders of fair trade respond that it's not socialistic at all. It's using the market to empower people so that they can invest in their future. And finally, one of the most common arguments is that it's economically inefficient. This isn't always true. Some fair trade practices recover efficiencies by creating a more direct relationship between producers and retailers by cutting out the middlemen who make it inefficient. Another study argued that fair trade actually creates efficiencies by bringing the exploitative conditions that are often existing in developing countries more closely in line with the ideal market conditions that most economic analyses assume, but which don't happen in real life. That isn't to say that fair trade is perfect. There are a number of reported cases of exploitation within fair trade practices. There are examples of local co-ops that have become, where there have been problems within the co-op among the farmers, but these seem to be individual runoffs, not system-wide problems. In fact, fair trade has become such an important part of global trade, especially in commodities like bananas and fresh fruits, cocoa and chocolate, coffee, cotton, flowers, handicrafts, honey, sugar, tea, and wine, that as of 2010, there were over 27,000 certified fair trade products, which were being sold in over 70 countries with sales amounting to about $4.6 billion globally. And all of this was largely promoted by the success of one initial company put together by three friends. It's an illustration of the anthropologist Margaret Mead's dictum, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, concerned citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." In 1999, a first grader in Canada named Ryan Hurljack learned that many people in Africa do not have clean drinking water. Ryan began saving up the $2,000 that it would take to pay for a well. His devotion to this cause over several months attracted the attention of a local newspaper, then a local television station, and soon donations came in, and Ryan was able to team with an NGO called WaterCan to build a well in Africa.
Our story begins here in Kemptville, Ontario, a small country town about an hour south of Ottawa, Canada's capital. It was just a regular day when 6-year-old Ryan Hurljack joined his friends in the grade 1 class at Holy Cross School. Nancy Prest was in her first year of teaching and wanted to inspire her young students about their place in the world, and maybe plant the seeds of sharing and caring.
It was during Lent, and we were, all the grade ones were saving pennies for the Lenten missions, and I had a sheet of paper from the vice principal that said how much money you could save for what would give the children in Africa. And Brian was really interested in the well. He was interested in the water and that people didn't have water, so he said, "How much was that well again?" On the sheet it said $70. He says, "I'm going to save for that."
And she explained that people were dying because they didn't have clean water, and that just gave me a bad feeling inside, because if I just closed my eyes and opened them again, in that classroom I would see more than 75 or even 100 things they didn't have. So I went home and begged and begged and begged my mom and dad for $70.
So we sat down with him and we explained to him that $70 was an awful lot of money and that we wouldn't be able to give it to him. However, if he was serious about it and if he wanted to earn the money, that we would help him by giving him some extra chores. When it looked as though he was going to reach $70, Mark and I sat down and talked about what we might be able to do about this. We had no idea where to send $70 to build a well, and so I called a friend of mine, Brenda, and asked her whether or not she had any ideas.
And Brenda got us in touch with an organization called WaterCan. So Mom, Brenda, and I took the money to WaterCan.
When Ryan arrived at WaterCan, a Canadian non-profit organization that helps facilitate water projects in Africa, he learned the hard truth. The fact sheet the teacher had was a bit off.
And they said, "You know, Ryan, it's going to cost a lot more than $70 to build a well. It's going to cost $2,000, really." And after they said that, I said I'd just do more chores.
Now the goal was $2,000, much more than Ryan could raise among family and friends. About the same time, the local newspaper got wind of his story, and people were touched by the young boy's spirit.
I was really proud of Ryan because even as adults, it's hard to stay focused on one thing and continue through a whole commitment like that. And as a 6-year-old, it was really amazing. And he was really determined. And we stopped collecting money, and we'd done our little penny parade. He continued on after that.
It wasn't long before Ryan was invited to speak at schools.
I would like to tell you a story of how my well began. It all began at school, in grade 1.
I watched him give a lot of talks, but the younger kids really do listen to him and pay attention to him. One of the questions they asked him was, "Are you rich?" And he got all red in the face and he goes, "No, I'm not rich, and all the money that I'm getting is going to these wells in Africa." And another boy asked him, "Are you famous? Do people notice you when you walk down the street?" And he just laughed. He said, "Well, I live in the country and everybody knows me already on my street."
There was a journalist from the Eganville Leader who asked him, he said, I'm listening to, all you're saying about, the work that you've done and the letters that you've sent and the schools that you've talked to, and it sounds like such a lot of work. He said, "Don't you ever get tired or miss being a kid?" As he stood on my briefcase, peered over the top, he said, half the time I think about being a kid, and the other half the time I think about Uganda. But he said, you can be a kid and think about Uganda too.
He has come here
The first TV interviews, well, I was a little shy and stuff, like everybody is when they first get on TV. But now, as today, I'm not shy at all about TV interviews. I know I don't like getting dressed up or anything, but really, I know it's good because every time I do this, it gets more money for the people in Uganda.
Hurljack's success depends on two fundamental principles. The first is that global inequities in the distribution of wealth mean that a middle-class Canadian boy has access to resources undreamed of by most adults in the world's poorest countries. In addition to the fact that money buys more in poorer countries than in wealthy ones, like drilling a well in Canada would typically cost more than 5 times what it does in rural Africa, people in developed countries enjoy advantages of infrastructure, access to media outlets, educational opportunities, automobile ownership, good roads, frequent flyer miles, personal computers, reliable telephone service, leisure time. All of these can serve as multipliers that make the work of philanthropic organizations easier and more effective. Today, as a college student, Hurljack runs the Ryan's Well Foundation, which has raised millions of dollars and helped build over 680 wells and 820 latrines, bringing safe water and improved sanitation to over 723,000 people, mostly in Africa. In interviews, Hurljack has insisted on a second lesson, which he calls the power of one. One person who devotes part of his or her time consistently to a cause can accomplish significant things while still leading a normal life. Hurljack himself has traveled internationally, met popes and presidents, and appeared on talk shows promoting the foundation, all while maintaining a healthy social life and extracurricular activities in school that we associate with North American culture. This principle is increasingly being used not only by philanthropies in the developed world, but by people in developing countries seeking to improve conditions at home. For example, while struggling with school and the famine conditions that destroyed many families in Malawi, 14-year-old William Kamkwamba figured out how to build a windmill out of discarded engine components, PVC pipe, and bicycle parts, so that he could provide free electricity to his family's house. Teaming with philanthropists and entrepreneurs both in Africa and the developed world, he's begun working toward developing additional windmills and other technologies for use in his village and elsewhere in Malawi. Ryan Hurljack and William Kamkwamba both represent examples of people who induced change on a small scale that led others to get involved in their projects and expand and multiply the effectiveness of what they were doing. They are examples of Gandhi's dictum, that we must be the change that we want to see in the world. Many philanthropic projects seek to improve technological access in communities with underdeveloped infrastructures so that they can use these to improve their opportunities, people's opportunities. The One Laptop Per Child Trade Association is a U.S.-based nonprofit organization created by faculty members of the MIT Media Lab that is trying to design, manufacture, and distribute $100 laptops so every child in the world can have one. The problem is that artifacts like laptops assume other aspects of infrastructure: dust-free houses, reliable current, working telephone lines, things that may not always be available for all the people in the world. And for the more than 1 billion people globally who live on $1 a day, even a $100 laptop may be hopelessly out of reach. An alternative to giving people access to technologies common in the West is to develop technologies that are appropriate to different environmental and infrastructural contexts. In Sitio Malagaya, a squatter community of brick houses with tin roofs built along a 7-mile stretch of unused railroad track in the Philippines, a man named Ilac Diaz fills soda bottles with water, seals them, and installs them on rooftops, allowing the sun's rays to shine through with nearly the brightness of a 60-watt light bulb. Designed and developed by students from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the solar water bulb is an example of appropriate technology, an effort to provide simple and easily replicable technologies that address basic needs in developing communities. Appropriate technologies refers to the low-cost technologies using local materials to create technologies useful in specific social and environmental contexts. Bicycle-powered water pumps, self-contained solar-powered light bulbs and streetlights, coal made from sugar cane and corn cobs, clay pot food preservers, and many other inexpensive devices have had major impacts on people's lives without the enormous infrastructural requirements of Western industrialization. Many schools of engineering have appropriate technology clubs and organizations and classes. It's an opportunity for anthropologists and engineers to get together and think about what kinds of technologies can be developed with principles that we already know how to do that can improve the lives of people who live in conditions that are very, very different from those we live in here in the United States. Okay, I want you to take out that piece of paper, physical, analog or virtual, preferably the same one, and a writing implement, whether it's a pencil or a pen or a keyboard. And I want you to write an answer to a different question than the one I asked you the first time. After listening to my 3 stories, I want you to answer the question, what one thing will you do to change the world? And once you've answered that, you finish the class. I hope that you have a great break. I look forward to reading and grading your papers and your final exams. And if you see me next semester on campus,